All right, guys, we're going to start the second part of science. We are starting on page 182. Remember, we did the first part and ended on 181. We are starting here with the food chain, okay? All living things need energy from the sun. Plants use sunlight to make food. Then animals eat the plants. They get the energy they need from the plants. A food chain shows how energy moves from plants to animal. So here's our third vocabulary word. So if you haven't written all three vocabulary words up here, go ahead and write them right now. Make sure you write that last vocabulary word up there. Here we're starting with a picture of the grass. It says the grass uses sunlight to make food. Now I'm going to try to show you both pages at once, but it's kind of tricky. So you can see the arrow that goes from the grass. The cricket eats the grass, and then it's coming again where it says the toad eats the cricket. So it's kind of a food chain where we're starting with a plant. Something small eats it. Something a little bit bigger eats the small animal. So I want you to trace the arrows on the food chain from the grass to the cricket and the cricket down to the toad. Okay, so trace those so you can see the order of the chain. Excuse me. Then we have a little math problem. It says, solve this problem. A toad can eat about 40 crickets in 1 hour. That's a lot of crickets. 40 crickets in 1 hour. How many can it eat in 2 hours? Well, let's see. 40 in 1 hour. So I'm going to have to do 40 plus 40 equals, I'll give you a second to think. I hope you found 80 because 40 plus 40 equals 80. So 80 crickets in 2 hours. That's a ton of crickets. Gross. All right, turn the page when you're done. Now, some of this we're going to do together and some of it we are not, okay? Since we're on the review part. Up here, I'm going to make my little star. That star means I'm not going to do it, but you are. It says choose an environment. Draw a living thing meeting its needs there. Now remember, we heard about the prairie. We heard about a tundra, the rainforest, the desert, the ocean. There's a ton of different environments that we learned about in this unit. So you draw a picture about one of them. Make sure I can see some detail about the environment and an animal living and meeting its needs in there, okay? Make sure you color it also. Then down here, it says number the parts of the food chain to put them in order. So think, what would be the first thing that we would use? A cricket, the grass, or a lizard? I hope you said grass because our food chain always starts with a plant. The next biggest would be a cricket. And finally, we have our lizard. So 1, 2, 3. So if you need to pause me to draw that, or you already have, awesome. All right, we're going to read this little, it's kind of like a journal entry from a friend that went to a zoo, or a forest, I'm sorry. So it says, Dear Journal, we're going to fill in the 3 spots with the word shelter, food chain, and environment. So Dear Journal, today I took a field trip to Mulberry Forest. It is an blank full of trees. It is a what? A shelter, a food chain, or an environment? What do you guys think? I hope you said it's an environment full of trees. I'm going to get that written up there. Environment full of trees. Birds use the trees for shelter or food chain. What could they use a tree for? Well, I know a food chain is something to eat, so it's got to be for shelter.
Look at Mom.
The trees need sunlight to make food. The birds eat berries from the trees. The sun, the trees, and the birds are part of a food chain. Okay, let me get that written in there. It was fun to learn about the forest. Your friend, Swati. So if you need to pause me again to get those written, go for it. I'll see you on the next page, okay? Okay, now with this one, we're talking about a tundra. Our main idea says a tundra is a cold environment. Now we need to write some details. Now the best way to do this is to look back in our lesson. So I'm going to flip back to page 180 where it's talking about a tundra. I'm actually going to show it to you guys quick, and we're going to reread this page really fast. A tundra is a very cold environment. That's what our main idea already told us. Plants grow close together near the ground. Animals have thick fur to stay warm. Now, it says I need a detail about an animal and a detail about a plant. Well, when I'm looking at here, or looking at the paragraph, there is a detail about plants and a detail about animals. So we're going to write those. So the animals, we're going to write, they have thick fur to stay warm. Okay? So there's our detail about animals. And then we're going to write a detail about plants. And I remember that we read that they grow close together near the ground. So I'm going to write that. Grows close together. Now remember, if I'm writing faster than you can always pause me to get it written, okay? Grows close together near the ground. Okay? So there's our sentence or our details. Like I said, if you need to pause me to write it, go for it. Now, what do all the living and non-living things in a place make up? Well, we heard in our vocabulary words that all of the living and non-living things in a place make up what? Do you guys remember? It's one of our vocabulary words. They make up our environment. So they make up an environment. All right, so I know there's a lot on this page, so I've said it a couple times. Go ahead and pause me, get it all written, and when you're done, go ahead and play again, okay? All right, it looks like we have about 1 or 2 pages left, but they aren't too long, okay? So we're talking about a forest ranger. So these are people that work in like the forests who help. It says they take care of plants and animals, make sure that they are safe. They teach people about nature and how to care for it. How does a forest ranger help keep plants safe? I teach people how to keep forest fires from starting. I make sure no one cuts down trees, because if they're being cut down and no one's replanting any, we're going to be losing all those habitats for different animals. How does a forest ranger help keep animals safe? I make sure people do not feed them. I protect their homes by protecting the forest. Well, if they're not feeding animals, doesn't that kind of sound the opposite of what we would want to do? Don't we want to feed animals? I hope you guys said no, because actually if we're feeding animals, then they're losing their natural hunting skills, and then they're not able to provide food for themselves, and then they're dependent on people, and then they end up not surviving. So it's actually not a good thing to feed wild animals. Now, there's a couple questions here about forest rangers and what they do. I want you to think of a question that you would ask a forest ranger, okay? So you could ask, do you have a favorite animal? Do you have a favorite park to work in? Do you have a favorite plant or animal or something like that? Okay. All right. Now, once you write your question, flip it over. And it says protect the forest. We have 3 things to write here. So it says, why are forest rangers important? What do they do? Do you remember? They take care of forests. So that's what we're going to write. They take care of forests. Okay. What would you like best about being a forest ranger? So I know there's 2 questions here, but this is a really small area. So I'm actually going to cross out the second part of it, okay? So just tell me, what would you like best about being a forest ranger? So here's another star. That means I'm not going to write anything because this is your opinion. Everybody could have a different something that they would like, okay? And then down here it says, suppose you are a forest ranger. Draw 1 animal or plant you help protect in the forest. So here's another thing that I'm not going to do, but you are. Draw me a picture of either an animal or a plant that you would want to protect. And yes, it needs to be colored. Okay? All right. If you have any questions, bring them to our Zoom. Bye.